I wasn't invited. Not this year, not the last 9 either. It started with a Tuesday email. Whitmore Family Retreat 2025. RSVP by Friday. I knew before I clicked that it wasn't meant for me, but I clicked anyway. There they were. Krista, her husband, their 2 kids, Uncle Roland still in that faded sun hat, even Lily, my cousin, who once ruined my medical school interview outfit and swore it was an accident. But no, Colin. No typo, no ghosted carbon copy, just omission carefully curated, fully intentional. There's a kind of silence that screams, and then there's the kind that whispers till it rewires your nervous system, the kind that tells you over and over you're not missed. I sat in my office in Boston, surrounded by glass deadlines and the sting of fluorescent light after an overnight shift. The corner window glared back at me. I'd worked 10 years to earn this view, a decade of studying sacrifice, graveyard shifts, and cardiac arrests. But the email on my screen turned the city skyline into fog. And then I did something I didn't expect. I typed the name of the beach house, the place where those retreats were always held. A New England-style house off Cape Cod, wraparound porch. Weathered cedar shingles, the last place I saw my father laugh before his stroke rearranged him. It wasn't for rent this time. It was for sale. No phone call, no message, just a buried listing. Motivated seller, deed under review. Price adjusted. The agent's name was familiar. She handled my grandmother's house years ago. It was clear they were getting rid of it, quietly, like they got rid of me. But I wasn't angry, not yet. I turned from the screen and pulled out the old box on my bookshelf. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, was a pocket watch, my father's, the one he gave me at 17. To remind you, he said that time moves forward, even when people don't. I held it in my palm for a while. Then I opened a new spreadsheet. It's strange how disappearance doesn't happen all at once. It begins with missing pieces. One ignored birthday text, one holiday photo without your name in the caption. One year where no one asks what your schedule looks like. I tried at first. I came to Thanksgiving even when it meant trading shifts. I sent baby gifts when Krista announced both pregnancies. I offered to cover part of Mom's mortgage when Krista's kids needed orthodontics. I showed up. But showing up is only respected when someone notices you came. Krista had the spotlight, always did. She was loud in that charming, camera-friendly way. She planned the matching t-shirts, color-coded itineraries, centerpieces with seashells and custom fonts. Once she called me from a craft store just to ask whether the napkins should be coral or teal. I said, I'm probably not coming that year. She replied, that's okay. We'll save you a plate. They didn't. When Dad had the stroke, I flew back alone. Mom didn't want to see him like that. Krista was too overwhelmed. I sat with him in silence. Read Steinbeck aloud, held his hand when it trembled. The first thing he said when he could form a sentence again was, you came. Later that year, I asked Mom about the estate. Not because I wanted the house, I just wanted to know what came next. She smiled without teeth and said, don't worry, sweetheart, Krista and I have it under control. They changed the locks after that. Said it was due to a break-in. I didn't ask why only my key stopped working. A year later, I saw a photo. Krista and Dad on the porch, sunset at their backs. I took that photo. I was standing right off frame. But in her post, I was gone. Cropped out, erased. That was the year I stopped sending gifts. But I didn't stop watching. Savannah, my old classmate from high school who now worked as a paralegal, occasionally sent me screenshots. Just so you're looped in, she'd write. Deleted threads, group texts I used to be in. They think you disappeared, she said. But you were just listening. I wasn't gone. I was documenting. And sometimes the people most eager to forget you are the ones most afraid of what happens when you come back. I didn't buy the beach house out of spite. I bought it because I was done pretending my absence was accidental. The listing had been up for nearly 2 weeks. Buried. No family emails. No farewell visit. No group text offering keepsakes from the living room or photos off the mantel. Not even a polite, we've decided to let it go. They weren't trying to honor it. They were trying to delete it. Only this time, they'd left a door open, and I knew how to walk through it. Savannah helped me find it. She ran a title search in under 10 minutes. Your dad set up a fallback clause, she said. I blinked. I what? She pulled it up on her screen. It's in the trust if the property lapses in taxes, insurance, or occupancy for more than 12 consecutive months. The title reverts to the secondary beneficiary, namely, you. I leaned back in my chair. She continued. Tax was unpaid last quarter. Insurance lapsed the month before. Technically, it defaulted. Not because of malice, because of arrogance. Krista and Mom had assumed they could sit on the house forever, that no one would check, that silence was enough to hold the walls up. But Dad had left a fuse in the foundation, and now the flame had reached it. If you want it, Savannah said, it's yours. I didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, I opened the small wooden box on my desk. Inside was my father's pocket watch, or the one with initials engraved in blocky serif font TW for Thomas Whitmore. I thought of the last thing he said to me before he couldn't speak. Time moves forward, Colin. Use it well. That night I made a list. Not a revenge list, a logistics one. My finances were solid years of saved resident pay, a modest condo, zero debt. I'd invested smart, lived small, and stayed out of the lifestyle game my family thought I was losing by not playing. 2 days later, I called the listing agent. She didn't recognize my name at first. When I said Colin Whitmore, there was a pause, then a slight intake of breath. Oh, she said. You're the other one. I didn't flinch. Yes, I replied, the other one. The papers were signed within a week. I activated the fallback clause, filed the documents, and transferred the title. The house was mine. No lawyers needed. No confrontation. Just a clean signature under a clause they'd never read. Then I made a reservation, just like they would have. 3 nights, the master suite. Guest name Dr. C. Whitmore. Under preferences, I requested firm pillows, white cotton sheets, a bottle of chilled Perrier Jouet, and most importantly, complete privacy. I received the confirmation via email. I didn't smile. I didn't pump a fist. I just closed the laptop and packed a small bag. I arrived early, not to greet them, not to gloat, just to see it one last time before they tried to walk through a door that no longer belonged to them. The house looked smaller, or maybe I had finally outgrown it. The porch swing was still crooked. The shutters still needed paint, but the bones were the same. It smelled like salt and faint lemon oil. The scent I remembered from summers spent scraping sand from my shoes and listening to Krista orchestrate family traditions while I quietly hauled chairs or scrubbed the grill. I checked the fridge, champagne on ice. The registry, my name spelled correctly. Then I left. I parked 2 streets over in a borrowed sedan and waited. At 6:42 p.m., Krista's white Audi pulled into the gravel. Her husband climbed out first. 2 kids followed, already bickering. Then Krista emerged, sunglasses high on her head, like a crown. Behind her Uncle Roland's SUV, rolled in with Mom riding passenger resort, linen white on white pearls tight around her neck. They approached the front desk in a tide of smiles and entitlement. And then everything stopped. I watched it unfold through the windshield. The receptionist, a young woman with short hair and good posture, looked down at her tablet. I'm sorry, she said. There's no reservation under those names. Krista tilted her head. It must be under Krista Whitmore. No, ma'am, the receptionist replied. This property is booked under Dr. Colin Whitmore. Entire house, Krista blinked. Silence, not the awkward kind. The kind that rewrites atmosphere. Then I stepped out of the car. Not for drama, just because it was time I stepped through the front door, heels echoing across the foyer tile. I didn't look at Krista. I didn't need to. Her silence was already loud enough. The receptionist turned toward me, eyes widening slightly, offered a small nod. I can confirm, I said evenly, I'm Dr. Whitmore. The deed finalized last week. My reservation covers the entire property. Krista stood there still as a photograph. Her husband shifted uneasily. The kids were silent for once. You bought the house, she said, her voice thin. Yes, Eleanor blinked. Her lips parted as if to ask why, but the question never came. Maybe she already knew. I turned back to the receptionist. Please ensure anyone not on my guest list is politely escorted. But do be kind, I added. They're family. The clerk nodded. She was young, but she understood the moment some people do. Behind me, there was no shouting, no pleading, just stillness. the kind that follows when people finally see what they'd been pretending not to. They left the front desk in silence, shoulders stiff, voices caught somewhere in their throats. And I didn't follow. I didn't have to. They knew now that was enough, or so I thought. The next morning, a white van pulled up outside the property line. Blue lettering, a news affiliate logo. A man with overstyled hair stepped out, holding a microphone like it was an artifact. I didn't answer the door. But that evening, my phone lit up like the 4th of July. Voicemails, DMs, screenshots. One from an old colleague. "Hey, is this you?" This story about a doctor stealing a beach house from his grieving mother. The headline read, "Doctor exploits legal loophole to seize generational property." The subhead was, "Worse sources say father was in cognitive decline." No names, of course, but I knew who the source was. Krista had always known how to say things without signing them. They made me sound like a stranger who'd wandered into a will and stayed for the real estate. I didn't reply. I didn't craft a rebuttal. Instead, I called Savannah. "You've seen it," I asked. "I have," she said. "You ready to answer it?" "No," I said. "I'm ready to show them the rest of the file." What Savannah had wasn't vengeance. It was documentation. She sent me a clean, organized folder, dated screenshots of deleted texts, emails, meeting notes. Evidence that I'd been erased from family matters, not accidentally, but systematically. "Don't worry," Krista had texted Eleanor. "Colin won't show. He never does. He's too busy proving something." "Leave him off the list," said another. "He makes things uncomfortable. We don't need drama this year." Then came the audio, a lunch call captured while Savannah sat 2 seats away. Krista's voice sharp and clear. "Colin was never cut out for this family. He's too fragile. Let him rot in his sterile little condo. We're better off without him." But the most important file came last. A video recorded on Dad's final summer. He was wrapped in a quilt, sitting on the back porch. I was just out of frame, reading aloud. His voice was slow but certain. "I want Colin to have this house." He said, "Krista makes things loud, but Colin, he makes them last. He's the only one who came when I fell. The only one who didn't need anything from me, but time." He looked into the lens. Then his eyes steady. "It's not about fairness, it's about memory." I'd saved that clip. Tucked it away for a moment I hoped would never come. Now I opened it again, and I forwarded it, along with the full archive, to a reporter I trusted, one who had written before on inheritance law and elder rights. No captions, no commentary. Just, "This is the full story, share if it matters." It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. By that afternoon, the original news story disappeared. A quiet correction followed. The station added a note, "Update." Previous reporting lacked essential context. My inbox stopped vibrating. So did the phone. Later that night, Savannah texted me 2 words. "They're quiet." Then a third, "You ready?" I stood in the window of the master bedroom, watching the sea collapse softly against the Cape Cod shore. The tide was high. My father used to say that high tide was a promise, but leaves always returns. I wrote back, "Yes, the courthouse smelled like disinfectant and worn-out linoleum." I arrived early. No legal entourage. No tailored suit. Just me, a dark navy jacket my grandmother once called steel-willed blue, and a slim folder tucked under my arm, and the same folder Krista once refused to hand me when we were sorting Dad's documents. They were already seated in the gallery when I entered. Krista, in bone-white lips, flattened into something halfway between indignation and panic. Eleanor beside her, pearls strung too tightly at her throat, fingers clutching a program she hadn't read. Neither looked at me. I didn't mind. The clerk called the case. Whitmore. Hereby Whitmore. Petition for injunction against title transfer. Grounds: undue influence, cognitive impairment, breach of familial trust. Their attorney rose first, young, overconfident. The type who hadn't needed to fight for a bar exam waiver to attend a parent's funeral. He used words like estranged, questionable ethics, emotional exploitation. He said my name like it was evidence. The defendant, Colin Whitmore, absent from family proceedings, emotionally distant, unaligned with the values and cohesion of the Whitmore legacy. Manipulated the late Mr. Whitmore during a period of cognitive decline. He paused before manipulated. Let it hang. I did not flinch. When it was my turn, I stood quietly, no theatrics. "Your Honor," I began, "I'd like to submit a video statement recorded by my father, Thomas Whitmore, several months before his passing. It confirms his intent for the property, his state of mind, and the nature of our relationship." The judge, a man older than both of my parents, nodded. The bailiff dimmed the lights. The screen flickered. My father appeared wrapped in the old porch blanket, the one that smelled of cedar and salt. He held a chipped mug in one hand, the ocean whispering in the background. "I want Colin to have this house," he said, voice low but clear. "Krista makes things loud. Colin makes them last. He was the one who came after I fell, the one who didn't ask for anything." A pause. Then he turned his eyes to the lens. "It's not about fairness. It's about memory." Silence followed. But this time, it wasn't hollow. It was full, heavy, the kind that doesn't ask to be broken. Next, the audio. A phone call captured, time stamped. Krista's voice. Let him rot in his sterile condo. He was never part of this family. He was just too fragile to fight for a seat. You could almost hear the clatter of silverware behind her mid-lunch. Then came the messages. Screenshots, dates, threads. "Don't worry, Colin's not coming. Exclude him from the mailing list. He's a liability at family events." The courtroom didn't gasp. No one had the right. The judge leaned back. He tapped his pen once, twice. "This court," he began, "does not resolve emotional wounds. It interprets law. And in this case, the law is clear." He looked at their lawyer. "The petition is without merit. Evidence presented confirms the decedent's clarity of intent, and the language used by the plaintiffs suggests calculated exclusion, not misunderstanding." He turned back to me. "The deed stands, Dr. Whitmore." Gavel. "Decision." Done. Outside, the sky was low and gray. The ocean looked like steel behind the dunes. They followed me out, Eleanor silent, Krista simmering, still too proud to boil. A reporter lifted a mic halfway, then hesitated. "Do you have anything you'd like to say to your family?" I paused just long enough to be clear. "No," I said, "I already did. I just used quieter words." Then I walked past the press line, down the steps, and into the breeze. Back at the house, the silence was finally mine. I didn't touch anything at first. I walked the room slowly. No shouting, no echo of inherited chaos, just the hum of baseboards warming and floorboards creaking in peace. In the study, I opened the bottom drawer of my father's desk. There, wrapped in cloth, was the pocket watch, his initials still polished. I wound it gently and listened to the tick, steady, unapologetic, time moving forward. The house was mine, but it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like stillness, not the kind you endure like long dinners and clipped conversation. The kind you choose, the kind you earn. I didn't throw away the photos. I didn't erase the old paint. I just opened the windows. Let the salt air do the cleaning. The dining table still had faint scratches where Krista's boys had scraped their puzzles into the wood. The back porch still leaned ever so slightly like Dad used to when he was making a point he didn't want to raise his voice about. There was no ceremony, no toast, no dramatic soliloquy. I just walked through the rooms one by one and acknowledged them. This was where I learned to gut a fish, where I snuck ice cream at midnight, where Mom read bedtime stories before she learned to filter which stories I was allowed to be part of. This was where Krista held court, where I held quiet. I didn't repaint it. I didn't stage it for guests. I kept it as it was. Because restoration isn't always about transformation. Sometimes it's about witness. Savannah showed up 2 days later. She brought window cleaner and a bottle of cheap red wine. "You didn't think I'd let you do all this and not help clean the windows, did you?" We cleaned in silence for a while. The kind that felt like music you didn't need to hear to feel. "I didn't think it would actually happen," I admitted. She glanced over. "Not the case or the house, you." I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. "I always thought I needed them to see me," I said. "To validate the way I exist, that if I could just prove I wasn't the problem." Savannah wiped the edge of the counter. "And now," I smiled. "Now I realize silence isn't peace. And being erased doesn't mean you disappeared." That night, I found the wind chime, the one Dad and I made when I was 9. A tangle of seashells and nylon string blue yarn, fraying from sun and age 1 shell, still had my crooked initials in permanent markers CW. It had been shoved in a drawer behind a stack of faded linens. I sat cross-legged on the porch and untangled it. Knot by knot, shell by shell. I didn't fix it because it was broken. I fixed it because it mattered. When it was ready, I hung it on the corner hook right where Dad used to sit. The wind caught it immediately, soft, uncertain. Then confident, it sang. News stopped coming after the court ruling. No more articles, no more inbox noise. Even Krista had gone quiet. No posts, no interviews, no updates. Sometimes silence is no longer a weapon. It becomes surrender. I never heard from Eleanor again. I didn't expect to. But I heard from Roland weeks later. Just a card. No apology, no return address. It simply read, "Your father would be proud. Maybe he always was. I should have said something." I didn't keep it, but I remembered it. Some ghosts are better acknowledged than buried. Now the house stays mostly quiet. Not empty, just content. I come here when shifts get heavy, when the city feels like too many eyes and not enough kindness. I bring friends. Sometimes Savannah's niece painted her name on a clamshell and tucked it on the windowsill. Marco, my coworker, helped install a new railing for the stairs without asking questions. This place isn't sacred, it's honest, and that makes it mine. On the anniversary of the court ruling, I stood at the edge of the porch and watched the wind move across the grass dunes. I didn't cry, I didn't gloat. I just stood there and let it pass through me. And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like I was outside the frame. To anyone who has been made invisible, to the ones who didn't leave but were never welcomed, to the people whose names were scrubbed from stories they helped build. You are not gone, you are not lost, you are not small. Some silences deserve to be broken. Others deserve to be left behind. I chose both, and I'm still here. Story 2, losing a child, is a pain no parent should endure. When our daughter Lily died in a car accident just before Thanksgiving, my world shattered. She was only 17, full of life and dreams. The call came on a cold Thursday in November, the kind you think only happens to other people. My name is Helen Whitaker. I had been a wife for 23 years and a mother for 17. After Lily's death, I felt like I was neither her laughter once the soundtrack of our home was silenced. Her room still smelled of lavender. I couldn't bring myself to change anything. Dich vu thoi tiet quoc gia. Alan, my husband, changed after the funeral. He stopped sleeping in our bedroom, claiming he needed space. He became distant, unresponsive, and cold. At night, I would hear the TV from the basement and the occasional ding of his phone messages. He didn't bother to hide. Grief turned us into strangers, sitting in silence across from each other, barely recognizing the people we once were. I sought therapy. He dismissed it as a waste of money. I lit candles by Lily's picture. He accused me of being dramatic. People lose children, Helen. He muttered once, tossing his keys on the counter. You have to move on. Then 7 weeks after we buried her, Alan dropped a bombshell. I was pouring coffee when he walked in, dressed better than he had in months. His hair was slicked back, clean-shaven, wearing a new shirt. I need to say something. He said, not even sitting down. This isn't working. You've changed. You're broken. Helen. I couldn't respond. He continued. I want a family, a real family. I can't have that with you anymore. He walked out, leaving me standing there, holding an empty mug. 3 days later, I came home early from the grocery store to find an unfamiliar car in the driveway, a little silver convertible. Inside, I heard laughter from upstairs. Alan appeared at the top of the stairs. Nor Helen. He said, as if I were the one who needed to explain myself. This is Claire. She's going to be staying with us for a little while. Claire. She was barely older than Lily. She waved from behind him like we were meeting at a backyard BBQ. Hi, I've heard so much about you. Open to hope. I didn't scream or cry. I put the milk in the fridge and said I was tired. That night in our house, he slept with her. I lay awake in Lily's bed, staring at the ceiling. But I didn't leave, not yet. The days that followed blurred together, long, slow hours of pretending I couldn't hear her laugh, pretending I didn't notice 2 coffee mugs in the sink instead of 1. Claire made herself comfortable fast. She wore my robes, took selfies in front of the fireplace, rearranged my throw pillows. She didn't work, didn't study, didn't even pretend to care that I was still in the house. I'd walk into the kitchen and she'd be perched on the counter, barefoot, giggling over something Alan was saying while he fried eggs like a happy newlywed. She called him Al. No one ever called him that, not even his mother. They talked about the future over dinner, as if I weren't sitting there with my casserole in grief. Maybe we should look at a new place, she'd chirp, with a pool and a garden and a nursery. Alan would nod, glancing at me like I was some distant relative overstaying her welcome. But I kept smiling, nodding, listening, because I'd started to notice things. Claire didn't know how to reset the circuit breaker when the power flickered. She asked where the vacuum was, like she'd never cleaned in her life. Her phone buzzed constantly with names I didn't recognize. Derek, Kayla, rich guy, yacht party. She was playing house, but she wasn't ready to be anyone's wife. And I knew Alan. He liked things polished and control. Claire was chaos and lipstick. One evening, while Alan was out meeting a client, Claire poured herself a glass of wine and plopped next to me on the sofa like we were girlfriends. "I don't get why you're still here," she said, sipping loudly. "No offense." I looked at her calmly. "I live here." She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, but like it's weird. I thought older women had more pride. Dish vu toi tiet quox gia, pas one, dien jan jiao buon, pas one." I didn't answer, but I watched her as she scrolled through her phone, laughing at a message from someone named Travis Dot. She was reckless, careless, and deep down, I suspected she didn't care about Alan. Not really. She was using him, and he was too blind or too arrogant to see it. Later that night, I pulled out the old safe key from the back of the linen closet. It had been there for years. Inside the safe was a folder: bank records, house, deeds, documents Alan assumed I'd forgotten existed, but I hadn't. Alan never handled paperwork. That was always my job. He didn't know what was in my name or what wasn't. The next morning, I started calling attorneys quietly, discreetly. Because I wasn't going to run, he brought the war to me. Now I was going to win it. By the second week, Alan was acting like a man who had just won something. He started showing Claire off in public, brunches, spa days, shopping trips. He brought her to the same resort we went to for our 10th anniversary. I only knew because I saw the receipt in the laundry tucked inside one of his shirts. Claire's perfume was all over everything, sweet, synthetic. Too young for her, and even younger for him. It stuck to the couch cushions, my bathrobe, the towels. She was marking territory like a cat. But I didn't react. I made conversation when necessary, smiled when neighbors waved, and played my part. It's amazing how much people underestimate you when you act like you've given up. One morning, Alan left his laptop open. I hadn't snooped in years, not even when I suspected other women. But that day something told me to look, and I did. Emails to real estate agents, saved apartment listings, plans to sell the house, my house. I printed what I needed and deleted the history. He'd never know I saw it. That night, I made a roast chicken and set the table with candles, just like I used to when we had family dinners. Claire didn't come down, claimed she was on a juice cleanse and couldn't stand the smell of cooked meat. Alan rolled his eyes, but ate. "You've been in a better mood lately," he said between bites. "It's refreshing. I'm working on acceptance." I said, "Not everything needs to be a battle." He smiled, satisfied, thinking I was surrendering. "But what? I want this to be peaceful. Claire and I are thinking of a downtown condo, something more modern." I nodded. "That's nice." What he didn't know was that earlier that day I'd met with a lawyer, Mara Pierce. She helped us with our wills back when Lily was born. She remembered me right away. "You still hold the deed, Helen," she said, flipping through the documents. "You're in a very strong position. Do you want to file?" "Not yet," I told her. "I want him to think he's winning." She raised an eyebrow. "Be careful. Men like Alan don't handle embarrassment well." I smiled. "Neither do women like me." That evening, I mixed Claire a drink, just juice and a crushed valerian root pill. Enough to make her drowsy. She went to bed early. When Alan fell asleep, I slipped into his office and backed up everything from his phone. Texts, photos, voicemails. He'd made a lot of mistakes. I just needed time. Later that night, I sat in Lily's room, holding the hard drive in my hands. The smell of lavender still lingered. I didn't cry anymore. Instead, I listened. I let the quiet sit with me. Somewhere inside, I could almost hear her say, "Don't let them take what's yours, Mom." On that drive, I found messages Alan had exchanged with another woman, older than Claire, but still younger than me. Her name was Denise, a realtor. Apparently, Claire wasn't the first fresh start he had tested out. Denise had turned him down, told him she wasn't interested in being someone's replacement fantasy. The messages ended weeks before Claire moved in, so this wasn't love. This wasn't grief. It was convenience control. Lily's death had interrupted the story, Alan told himself. The picture-perfect family man routine didn't work anymore, so he changed the story, found someone to fill the gap. One morning, Claire blew up about the thermostat. I'd dropped it a few degrees overnight. She stomped into the kitchen, barefoot wrapped in one of Alan's sweatshirts. "It's freezing," she snapped. "Did someone mess with it?" "It's an old system," I said, sipping my tea. "Sometimes it resets." She gave me a sharp look, as if she knew I was lying, but didn't know how to prove it. That's the thing about people like Claire. They need to win small battles, because they're terrified of losing the war. Later that week, she started disappearing for hours, coming home with expensive bags and receipts hidden in the bottom of her purse. I checked the bank account. Alan was giving her thousands every week. She was bleeding him dry. That night, Alan slammed a drawer in the kitchen. "Did you take the bank statements?" I didn't look up, know why. Because they're gone. "And Claire says you've been watching her. She should lock her door then." He stared at me. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe fear. "She's pregnant, Helen." I looked at him. He was serious. "She took a test this morning. We're going to be a family." I took a long sip of tea. "You don't even know if she pays her own phone bill." He stormed off, furious that I wasn't devastated. He didn't know I already had everything I needed. The deed was in my name. The prenup had long expired, and I had months of documented emotional abandonment, proof of financial mismanagement, and now evidence of adultery. He gave me the ammunition. All I had to do was aim. I met with Mara again the following Monday. She raised her brows when I told her about the pregnancy. "Do you believe it?" she asked. "I believe Claire knows how to survive. If it's a lie, she said, that might work in our favor. She looks manipulative. He looks desperate." It was the first time in months I laughed. Not out of joy, out of clarity. Back home, Claire started her nesting baby name books on the coffee table, parenting videos on full volume. She avoided stress for the baby's sake, but still smoked in the garage when she thought no one was looking. One night, I followed her out to the backyard. She was curled under one of Alan's blankets, phone to her ear. "No, he has no idea," she said, laughing softly. "Honestly, he's boring, but the money's good. I just need a little more time." I stepped back inside before she saw me. The next morning, I left 3 pregnancy tests on the counter with a note. "Since the first one was so exciting, I thought you might enjoy confirming." She threw them away quietly. The cracks were forming. Claire started accusing Alan of cheating. Alan stopped talking about downtown condos. Tension built like fog on a window, thick and visible. Then one day he came home early. She was on speakerphone with that same voice. The boyfriend, I assumed. "Once he gives me access to the equity," she said, "I'm gone. I swear, I'm sick of pretending." Alan stood in the doorway, frozen. He didn't yell. He didn't confront her. He just turned, walked upstairs, and shut the door. That night, he asked me to go for a walk. It had been years since we walked together. After a couple laps, he stopped. "What would you do?" he asked quietly. "If someone betrayed you?" I met his eyes. I'd make sure they regretted it. He nodded, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't look like Alan anymore. He looked like a man realizing he'd burned the wrong bridge. After that walk, things changed in the house. Not loud or sudden, just colder. Quieter. Claire stopped bouncing around like she owned the place. She started watching Alan more closely, second-guessing his silences. He stopped coming home with takeout for 2. Stopped shaving even. They still pretended, but it was like watching 2 actors waiting for the curtain to drop. And I stayed steady. I made my tea. I kept the house clean. I smiled politely. Because sometimes dignity is the sharpest knife you can carry. One afternoon, I came home to find them yelling in the kitchen. "You used me." Alan was shouting, palms flat on the counter. "You lied. You brought me here." Claire shot back. "You said you wanted this. You said you were pregnant." "I might be." That's when I cleared my throat. "Set the groceries down." "I bought salmon." I said, "It'll go bad if I don't put it away." Neither of them said a word. Claire stormed upstairs. Alan followed, muttering something I didn't catch. That night, I left a small envelope on Alan's desk. Inside were bank statements, Claire's spending the credit card he opened under both their names, the spa visits, luxury charges, Venmo transfers. I highlighted one, a charge to a fertility clinic, the same day she took that test. Next morning, Alan sat across from me at the kitchen table, eyes bloodshot. "She's not pregnant," he said. I nodded, "I know. She said she was freezing her eggs. It was part of a referral thing, some influencer deal. She gets a kickback for every sign-up." I stirred cream into my coffee. "Sounds like a smart businesswoman." He looked down. "I don't know what I've done." But I did. And I was finally done, waiting for him to figure it out. I handed him a new envelope. "This is from Mara," I said. "It's the first draft of the divorce filing." He looked stunned. "Helen, we can fix this. I'll make it right. We can talk." "We could have," I said. "But you stopped talking to me a long time ago." He blinked, reaching for something that wasn't there. "I want full ownership of the house." I continued, "In the joint investments, I'll also be pursuing damages related to emotional distress and financial misconduct." "You're serious?" "I'm prepared," I said. He paced the room, muttering, "You always could hold a grudge." "No," I replied. "But I've finally learned to hold a boundary." That night, Claire didn't cry or yell. She just packed. She avoided eye contact, stuffed her expensive dresses into a duffel, left the makeup on the bathroom counter, no note, no apology, just silence, and a lingering trail of her too sweet perfume. Alan tried to erase her presence, cleaned the house, top to bottom, mowed the lawn, made French toast the next morning like he was pretending we were back in 2007, like Lily was just sleeping in. But the kitchen was too quiet and I didn't eat. Neighbors started whispering. Cheryl from across the street caught me by the mailbox. "She moved out?" she asked, voice hushed. "Is it true?" I smiled. "Eventually, yes." At Mara's recommendation, I scheduled a formal walkthrough of the house as part of mediation. Alan hated it, said it was aggressive. "No," I said. "What you did in this house was aggressive. I'm just organizing the wreckage." He didn't answer. A few days later, I got an email from his lawyer. Alan wanted to settle outside of court. He was done fighting. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even triumphant. I just felt clear. Mediation was quiet. Alan looked smaller in that office chair than I remembered. His suit didn't fit quite right. He signed the agreement without argument, full transfer of the house, the cars, the investments. No contest, no further claims. As we left the building, he stopped me in the hallway. "Was it always this easy for you to be cold?" I met his eyes. "You made me cold," I said. "Then you mistook my survival for cruelty." He didn't respond. 2 days later, the paperwork was finalized. I stood alone in the living room. My living room, watching the light stretch across the hardwood. I had the walls painted, tossed out the rug Claire loved, sold the couch Alan and I bought on our 15th anniversary. I kept Lily's room the same, at least for a while. One weekend, I opened her cedar chest and gently folded her journals inside. I didn't cry, not this time. I placed her favorite book on top. Then I closed it, not to forget, just to preserve. That same day, I called a real estate agent. Her name was Dana. She had kind eyes. "This is a beautiful place," she said during the walkthrough, "but you seem ready." "I am," I replied. The house sold in 3 weeks. A young couple bought it, expecting their first child. The woman stepped into Lily's room and said, "This would be perfect for a nursery." I smiled, and I meant it. I moved into a small coastal cottage not long after. Nothing fancy, just quiet, just mine. I started painting again. I took morning walks by the water. I made friends with a woman named Margaret who sold flowers near the pier. We talked about loss and lilies, and how some waves look soft but knock you clean off your feet. One morning, I mailed a photo to Alan. It was of Lily in the backyard, age 9, laughing with her arms full of dandelions. On the back I wrote, "She deserved better." Now, so do I. Story 3. My name's Emily. I turned 19 this past spring. I've always been the quiet type, focused, not one to draw attention at school or family gatherings. But I worked hard. Every birthday since I was 6, I asked for money instead of toys. Every summer while other kids went to camp, Or the beach, I bagged groceries, babysat mowed lawns, even painted fences when the hardware store needed help. My parents taught me the value of money, or at least my mother did. Dad left when I was 12. We don't talk about him much. After 13 years of saving, I had just over $20,000, enough to make college real community college for now. Then maybe transferred to a university once I proved myself. I kept the money in a joint savings account under my name and my mother's. But she got sick last year, breast cancer, and had to stop working. Medical bills came in, we were struggling, and that's when he stepped in. Uncle Dennis, Mom's younger brother, though you wouldn't know it. He always looked older somehow. He'd been a fixture in our lives, on and off. The type of man who had a new plan every month, a new job, a new scheme. Temporary rough patch, he'd say, with a laugh that didn't match his eyes. My mother always forgave him, always made excuses. He helped out sometimes, sure drove me to school when our car broke down. Brought over groceries when things got tight. But he never did it quietly. He always needed to be seen doing the right thing. 2 months ago, after a brief hospital stay, my mom was too tired to keep up with bills, so she made a decision. She gave Uncle Dennis limited access to our accounts to help out. Just to pay the electric, the water. She said, he's family. 3 weeks later, I went to deposit a small check for my weekend shift at the diner. That's when I saw the balance, $432.55. I remember staring at the screen thinking it was some kind of glitch, a system error. I asked the teller to print the transaction history. She hesitated, even asked if I was sure. I said yes, it was all there. Withdrawal after withdrawal, all labeled online transfer. Every dollar gone YouTube. I don't remember walking home. I do remember the numbness, the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I turned the front door knob. I found Mom asleep on the couch, her face pale, a half-empty cup of herbal tea on the table. I didn't wake her. I went straight to my room, shut the door, and opened my laptop. I started digging not just into our bank records, but into Uncle Dennis, his social media, his history, anything I could find. And there it was, staring me in the face under a sun-soaked filter. A brand new Sea-Doo GTX limited jet ski captioned, "Treating myself, summer's not going to enjoy itself." My money, my future gone, and no one else knew, not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The image of that stupid jet ski burned into my eyes. I could almost hear his laugh, that smug, greasy chuckle like he was always in on a joke. No one else understood. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to break down. But I didn't. That's not who I am. Not anymore. I waited until morning, until the sun slipped over the neighbor's roof and painted the blinds gold. Mom was already in the kitchen, moving slow, spooning oatmeal into a bowl like it weighed 50 pounds. Her hair had started growing back after the last round of chemo, fine and gray, no, nothing like before. She looked tired but peaceful. I hated that I had to break that. I slid the printed bank statement across the table. She glanced at it, then looked up at me confused. Her voice was soft. "What's this?" "You let him into the account." I said, "You gave Dennis access." She blinked. "Emily, he said he'd help while I was in the hospital. I thought it was just to pay the electric." "Maybe some groceries." "He didn't pay the electric," I interrupted, "or groceries. He bought a jet ski, Mom, with my college fund." Her face turned pale. She pulled the paper closer, scanning the numbers. "That can't be right." She whispered, "He wouldn't." "He did." I opened the laptop and pulled up the picture again. "See for yourself." Her lips parted slightly. She looked like she was going to be sick. "I didn't know, I swear, Emily. I would never. Capital Area District Library." "I believe you," I said quickly, and I meant it. She looked wrecked. Whatever guilt she carried, it was real. "But we need to fix this." She nodded slowly. "I'll call him. He'll bring it back." No, I said, "Don't call him, not yet." She looked up confused. "Why not?" "Because he'll lie. And once he knows we know, he'll start covering his tracks. I want to go to the bank first. I need to know if this was legal, if we can press charges or freeze what he has left." Mom hesitated. "He's your Uncle, Emily. He stole from me." Her silence said more than words could. After a moment, she said, "All right, we'll go after breakfast." I didn't eat. I just sat there staring at the steam from her oatmeal, feeling like a stranger in my own house. At the bank, the manager was kind but firm. Since Mom had added Dennis as a temporary authorized user and hadn't put any restrictions in writing, and the withdrawals weren't technically illegal, immoral, yes, but not criminal. Unless we could prove fraud or coercion, there was little we could do. My mom's eyes were wide with regret. He knew what he was doing. I told the manager. He waited until she was too sick to pay attention. The manager hesitated. "If you believe there was financial abuse, you may want to speak to a lawyer, especially since it involved medical vulnerability." That word stuck with me, abuse. I hadn't thought of it like that before, but the more I replayed everything in my head, the more it fit. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. He waited until Mom was weakest, till I was distracted by work and school applications. He'd watched us drown and slipped a hand into my pocket while pretending to throw us a rope. I thanked the manager and asked to be removed from the account completely. I'd open a new one with no one else on it. Not even Mom. That night, I sat at my desk staring at the blank screen of an email I hadn't yet written. I was tempted to tell him to send him. I didn't send the email, I didn't text, I didn't even breathe a word to Dennis. Not yet. I knew the moment he found out. I knew he'd bolt. He'd vanish into one of his borrowed trucks or Buddy's spare rooms. So I sat with it. I kept quiet. Like how animals go still in the brush before a storm, that's how we survive. We listen. We wait. I gathered everything, every deposit I'd made, every withdrawal he'd taken. I printed bank logs, screenshots of his jet ski posts, even receipts I'd kept from odd jobs. I made 3 copies, one for my room, one hidden at school, one always in my backpack. If I disappeared, someone would still know. That afternoon, I called the legal aid office. A girl picked up, young voice, polite but unsure. She connected me to Mara. When Mara called back, her voice didn't tremble. Steady low, like she knew the shape of this story before I said a word. We met a week later in a borrowed room above a dentist office. She wore jeans and a cardigan and looked tired but sharp. When she saw my folder, her lips curled slightly. "You came prepared." "Didn't come to talk?" I said. "Came to fix." She flipped through the papers, slow, deliberate. Her fingers paused on a withdrawal marked "Online transfer, Dennis." She looked up. "He may not have broken criminal law yet, but if we can show he used your mother's illness to gain access, and he never intended to help." "We've got a civil case." I asked her what I already knew. "Will I get it back?" She didn't lie. "No guarantees, you have to be okay with that." I nodded. That night I told Mom. She cried quietly. Like leaves falling outside the window. "I trusted him, Clara. He's my brother." "And I'm your daughter." I said. She didn't answer, but she didn't disagree. Mara sent me to a forensic accountant named Greg. He didn't waste words, didn't look like the kind who hugged you or asked about school. But he understood numbers, like they were stories, and Dennis's story. It was sloppy. He didn't just buy a jet ski. He bought dinners, gambling tokens, weekends at short-term rentals. All with my future, all on record. Greg tapped his screen. "About $300-400 is left. Maybe we can still freeze it." "Do it," I said. The paperwork went out the next morning. I signed without flinching. That afternoon, Mom poured coffee and stared out the window. When we were kids, he talked circles around everyone. Always had a reason, always had someone else to blame. "Still does," I said. She didn't disagree. Saturday, Dennis came. Rental SUV, mirrored sunglasses, button-down shirt, like someone playing a part, the kind of man who forgets who he used to be. I had my phone recording under the fruit bowl, another in the hallway. He kissed Mom's cheek, grinned at me like nothing was wrong. "My girls," he said. Mom sat him down, told him what we knew. He laughed it off, said Mom had agreed to it, just a loan. He'd said we're family. Then I laid out the papers. All of them. He looked, his smile cracked. "You spying on me?" I'm protecting myself, I said. He turned to Mom. You really letting her do this? Mom's voice shook. You promised it was for electric groceries. You lied. He said he meant to pay it back. With what I asked, your next lie. He stood, slammed his hand on the table. You think the world owes you because you saved birthday cash? Newsflash, Clara. Nobody cares. Mom stood. Get out. He blinked. Anne. Now. He stormed out. The door slammed like thunder. Monday morning, Mara listened to the recording with headphones, didn't blink. When it ended, she leaned back. We've got him enough for a civil suit, maybe more. Greg emailed me later that day. The freeze was approved. 3-426, 17th held. Not much, but it was something. Then Dennis texted me that night. You'll regret this. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Mara. The storm had started. And this time, I wasn't hiding under the roof. I was standing in the open eyes. Wide ready court was set for late fall. The air had started to cool by the time I walked through the courthouse doors, Mara by my side. She wore her usual calm-like armor. I wore a navy blazer that didn't quite fit, but made me feel older, sharper. My mother sat behind us, hands folded, Aunt Lorraine beside her. Together, they looked like a wall that had finally learned to say no. Dennis showed up 10 minutes late. Sunglasses on inside. His lawyer looked like a man who just read a bad Yelp review of his own life. They took their seats, and the room settled. The judge was a woman with silver hair, pulled tight, sharp eyes. She called us to begin. Dennis's lawyer started first painting me like a girl too emotional, too naive, said the money was gifted that I misunderstood. Called it a family matter. I sat still, didn't even blink. When it was our turn, Mara stood and let the evidence speak, the audio recording, the transaction records, the text message. She walked them through each line, each date. She played the voicemail from Aunt Lorraine. She called Lorraine to the stand. Lorraine didn't shake. She told the court how Dennis had borrowed money, promised paybacks, vanished, how he'd leaned on every branch of the family tree until there was nothing left to break. Clara stood up when the rest of us were too tired. She said, she reminded us that silence isn't peace. Then I was called. I took the stand hands, steady voice, quiet. I spoke of years of saving, of babysitting in the heat, mowing lawns, watching each deposit bring me closer to a future I told them about. And of the moment I saw the jet ski post, the kind of betrayal that burns cold, not hot, that makes you quiet instead of loud. Dennis didn't meet my eyes. When I stepped down, I didn't feel relief. I felt the air shift, like something sacred had been returned. Not the money, something older. My dignity. The judge didn't rule that day, said she'd send the decision later. 3 days passed. The envelope came on a Thursday. Heavy paper-sharp corners. I sat on the porch to open it. Judgment in my favor. Dennis was ordered to repay the full amount, plus damages, plus legal fees, garnished wages, a lien on the jet ski. He'd fought hard, but the truth fought harder. I showed it to Mom. She didn't speak, just put her head in her hands and breathed deep. We had dinner that night. Pasta jar sauce. But the kind of quiet that followed wasn't heavy, it was full. Weeks later, I got my college acceptance letter. A good school, not flashy, but mine aid, would cover most. Dennis's payments would cover more. I taped the letter to the fridge. Not because I needed to brag, but because I needed to remember. He took something. I took it back. Dennis stopped calling, stopped posting. His lawyer tried to appeal, but the judge denied it. His noise faded. My life didn't. Aunt Lorraine visited again. Brought pie, said, "You saved more than your future, Clara. You saved us from feeling crazy." I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Fall passed. I packed for school. Labeled boxes, folded dreams. On the last night before I left, I walked to the lake where Dennis had posted that jet ski photo. The water was calm, empty. I stood there a while, not angry, not afraid, just still. Sometimes we don't win by shouting. We win by standing, by speaking, by holding the line. This wasn't revenge. It was return.